same external cross racing idea in Chicago as the John Hancock Center. It's much taller. But now we have the final of the Gateway series of buildings, known as Gateway 4. Finally breaks into the postmodern school of architecture. The curve to the building, referencing the slight bend in the river here, as well as all that green tinted glass, again reflecting the green of the river. Done by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, 1984. And then now we have this large, rundown, sort of jalopy of the building. Now this actual old post office. And when it was done in 1932 by Brand Anderson Rosen Knight, it was the world's largest post office. And if you're wondering why we needed such a giant post office, I'll get to that story once we clear Congress Park. This tends to be a pretty noisy bridge, especially when traffic picks up, so I usually go quiet as fast as I get there. They've also been doing some construction on the parkway, which is why they have that one side of the roadway lifted up on the scaffolding there. Now, if it looks like Congress Parkway is running right through the old post office, it is. And the post office came first, and they left a big hole in the base of their building.
It's all scaffolding.
Not terribly loud now. A lot of traffic. But I still take the opportunity to take a deep breath, take a sip of water. If any of you are thirsty, don't forget about Eric back there at the full service bar. He is willing to mix you up whatever your heart desires. Maybe. Okay. Well, feel free to go back there. We're going back to the post office and why we needed such a giant one. Well, Chicago is actually the mail order catalog industry's capital to the world. It started on Montgomery Ward, later taken off by Sears and Roebuck, among many others. All right here in the city of Chicago. So we thought we needed this giant post office to tell that incoming and outgoing
still don't have power yet.
And we were wrong. Now the main problem with post office never relies too much on its net, having to move the mail up and down the floors, taking days at a time, let alone getting the mail out to the rest of the world. So the building was deemed archaic and inefficient, and it is currently vacant. No real future plans in store for the post office. Right next door here, we would get this new post office by Knight Architects in 1996. I lovingly call it the new post office. It's not really much to look at, just a bunch of concrete and steel. But it does serve its purpose. Now the mail is laid out on just one floor here, and the post trucks can actually drive right into the building, pick up their mail, and then drive right back out, which should make for some pretty speedy delivery. Now, unfortunately for Knight Architects in 1996, they made sort of a big deal about the grand opening of the new post office here. That first mail truck was set to roll through the entranceway. They had all the media come out, all the cameras were rolling, and as that post truck went to roll through the entranceway, it got stuck. Now, because apparently when they were measuring the height of the post trucks, they measured the height without any tires actually on the truck. So when the first truck came through with tires, they got stuck. And what they had to do was let some of that air on those tires so it would sink down enough to release itself from the entranceway. Very embarrassing. Of course, since then, the building has been renovated. Post trucks going in and out with much ease now. But Knight Architects have not done a building here in Chicago since. But now we're coming up on what I think is the most historic site of the tour today. It is the site of that great conflagration, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. The site where Mrs. O'Leary's barn once stood. And coming up off to the right here, after past the little power station, there's a red and white radio tower, stands a little bit off in the distance, should have a blinking red light at the top. Then next to that, there's a really low-lying brown building, has one orange wall to it. That building stands in the exact location. And that building is now Chicago's Firefighting Academy. So we do have a unique sense of humor about the location. Now, if you haven't heard the story, it goes something like this. They say on October 8th, 1871, Mrs. O'Leary went out to milk her cow around 8 or 8 o'clock at night. It's fairly dark out, so she has her lantern with her light away. The cow was a little bit feisty that night, knocked over the lantern, setting her barn as well as the rest of the city. And of course, the story isn't really true. The newspapers at the time completely made it up. Now, if you can believe it, in the 1870s, newspapers were more interested in selling copies than they were things like the truth. Of course, this never happens nowadays. That did happen. That's all this was, a made-up story. Poor Mrs. O'Leary and her cow were vilified the rest of their lives, called a wicked old woman with a stupid-looking cow. Very unfair. I was actually taught a Chicago history for the longest time. Now, there are a lot of different stories out there about what might have actually caused that Great Chicago Fire. Nobody knows for sure. My personal favorite is meteor showers, because I like to think that a meteor struck down there, sparked the Great Chicago Fire. It got the dinosaurs, and it got Chicago. I just like the way that sounds. The truth of the matter is, it was definitely Chicago's fault. We built our city entirely on wood. Came up with this balloon frame construction idea, very cheap and easy way to build wood framed housing. All these houses were built way too close together. The streets, as well as the sidewalks, were paved in wood. And we were going through a pretty heavy drought at the time. So all we needed was a spark to set us off. And did leave a third of our population homeless. Over 100,000 people left without homes. Luckily though, the casualties were at a minimum. Only around 300 people actually perished in that Great Chicago Fire, so low number compared to damage. Off to the right here, we do have River City. That's another Bertrand Goldberg design. The guy who gave those Arena City Towers, big, complicated ones. And the guy who was revolting against the straight line. Again, it's another very linear structure here. It's another city within a city. You can dock your boat here, park a car on the back, have a restaurant, fitness center, place sleep, pretty much for shut-ins. But more importantly, off in front of us here, this very tall building now looming here. And this is, of course, the Sears Tower. Well, now officially it's the Willis Tower. Now, if you haven't heard, the Willis Insurance Brokerage Company came here for London. And they bought up like 3% of the floor space inside the Sears Tower. And with that 3%, apparently came the naming rights to the building. And they thought they'd make a lot of new friends here in Chicago by renaming the Sears Tower the Willis Tower. So it is officially the Willis Tower. It has been for about a year. I'm just going to keep calling it the Sears Tower. So when the Sears Tower was finished in 1974, at 1,451 feet to the roof, that was good enough to make it the tallest building in the world. That was up until around 1996, when the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia surpassed our Sears Tower. Now, Chicagoans were pretty upset about this. And we became even more upset when we realized the only reason the Petronas Towers were considered taller than our Sears Tower is because they had a spire on the top of the buildings. Now, a spire is nothing more than a hollow tube. Okay, you can't walk around in a spire. You really can't do anything in a spire. So, Chicagoans decided to do what we do best, and we complained. To the people who define what's tall and what's not. Surprisingly enough, there is a committee that meets on this size. It's the Council for Tall Buildings and Urban Habitats. Who knew they existed? And we got them to create two separate categories. So now we had the world's tallest usable floor space. And the Petronas Towers had the tallest architectural top. Of course, all that would go out the window when in Taipei, Taiwan, built the Taipei 101. Topping out taller than the Sears and the Petronas in both categories. And more recently now, you might have heard the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Now the tallest building in the world. That building's something like 2,700 feet tall. So even if you were to go to the tip of the antennae on top of the Sears Tower there, which I do not recommend doing, that would be 1,730 feet. Just about 1,000 feet shy of that Burj Khalifa. That building is just insanely tall, really dwarfing all other buildings in comparison. Now, here in Chicago, we were planning a 2,000-foot building of our own. It was going to be called the Chicago Spire. But the funding for that project has been an issue lately, so those plans got open. Now, there is still a Chicago connection to the tallest building in the world. That Burj Khalifa was done by Adrian Smith, a Chicago architect, did the NBC Tower, as well as Trump's new building here in Chicago. But now we have this pink building kind of obstructing our view of the Sears Tower, known just by its address as 311 South Wacker. It's a unique lesson in perspective. If you look at it from this point of view, it looks almost similar in height to the Sears Tower. But then if you look into the Sears Tower, you might be able to make out the reflection of 311 South Wacker. That's a more accurate representation of the height of the building. In 1990, and they had a unique problem of designing their building right next to the world-famous Sears Tower. So how do you outshine the Sears Tower? How do you steal some attention away from it? Well, first, you clad your building in pink Texas granite. Then you make it a weird octagon-like shape. Nobody's really using the octagon to its fullest potential. you literally outshine the Sears Tower by putting a giant steel drum on top of your building and filling it with around 2,000 fluorescent LEDs. So when the dark night, it is the brightest building in our city skyline. And originally, it was so bright that birds migrating south from Canada were altering their migratory routes, thinking it was the moon. Now, since then, the wattage on light bulbs has been lowered. It's a little bit dimmer now. Still the brightest building in our city skyline, but now bird-friendly. That's Off in front of us, we have this white building here. If you look to the top, there is a triangular section shooting up about 13 stories taller than the rest of the building. This was done by none other than Harry Weiss and Associates, the man I mentioned, who seemed to be obsessed with the triangle. Just another interesting way of incorporating triangles into his buildings here. You might notice the lobby also has sort of a triangular theme to it. These two buildings, there's a nice clearing and you get a really great view of the Sears Tower. You see the Sears Tower from the base all the way up to the roof, giving you a really great idea just how tall the building actually is. Now you can look all the way to the top, you might be able to make out those glass balconies hanging off the sides there. It's a new observatory. Take a step out onto those, take a look straight down. It seems pretty terrifying to me. But you might want to check it out. Now, could you imagine climbing the Sears Tower, like from the outside, climbing like that? It's been done twice. Now, the first time it was done by Dan Goodwin in 1981, and the second time, more famously, was done by Alain Robert, a French daredevil by the nickname of Spider-Man. Now, he did it in 1999 without any safety riggings. No nets, no ropes, no safety harnesses whatsoever. Walked up to the building, started climbing. And he did make it all the way to the top, and he was greeted there by Chicago's finest. They presented him with a lovely pair of bracelets. He was arrested for trespassing, performing an aerial show without a net, and some other charges. And eventually they let him go, it's just pretty fun. Now, the Sears Tower is done in a 9-bundle tube construction. I think of 9 sticks gathered together for strength. That's the basic idea behind it. Of course, each of those sticks is actually a 75 by 75 foot building. And 2 of them go to the 50th floor, 2 to the 66th. 3 go to the 90th floor, then 2 go all the way to the 110th story top. With this bundle tube construction, the Sears Tower can actually spread 3 feet into the rush to the top. That's not the game of those minutes. It's a band of now off to the right, we have the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. The 2 40-story towers are flanking what used to be the central trade floor here. It was done by Fujikawa Johnson Associates in 1987. And they had a unique problem of designing 40,000 square feet of uninterrupted floor space in the center here for the traders who all the signaling and jump around the tender. And they were worried that when they put in that trade for all the weight settling and pulling on the 2 towers, the towers might start to cave in. So what they did was very slightly bowed out the 2 towers they were constructed, using a Benji floor. So the trade floor put in all the weight settled and cleared the towers to the lowest strength. And that trade floor is the trade floor. The trade here is made. If since renovated that space, just turning it over emphasis. But now we have the Civic Opera building here, as it is very clearly labeled. Now this is, of course, an actually spelled building with a V, I guess. We do nickname this building Insol's Throne. So if you crane your neck back, you might be able to make out it's in the shape of a giant armchair or throne. And it was commissioned by a man of the name Samuel Insull, the utilities king here in the city of Chicago. Worked for Thomas Edison in his heyday. Again, the building was commissioned by Mr. Insull. He was the original owner of the building. It was actually built by Graham Anderson Probst & Barnwell in 1949. Again, a very unfortunate time. The Great Depression was looming. Mr. Insull would lose a lot of money, as well as his opera building here. And instead of consoling him, Chicagoans decided to make fun of him, saying that upon Mr. Insull's death, his spirit would rise up and sit on his mighty throne. So that's actually where it's the nickname of Insull's Throne from. And there are a lot of different stories out there about why the building has that throne-like shape to it. One of them says that Mr. Insull had a daughter who went to New York to try her hand at opera. And she was so bad that she got booed all the way back here to the city of Chicago. So Mr. Insull decided to build her own opera building with its back turned to New York. And there's a similar story, just replacing him with his wife. And another story that says he was upset with his downtown investors after the Great Depression hit. So he had the building built with its back turned to the downtown office buildings here in Chicago. But the more likely story It's probably just due to a zoning ordinance that was put in place in 1923. And that said that only a quarter of your building could rise to its full height. The rest had to be a city ordained height. Then the lower section to the upper building there is actually where opera stage is, so it can't support any higher floor space. That explains the whole throne-like shape to it. And now off to the right, we have this red brick structure here with all the ivy adorning its facade. This stands on a very historic site. It was right here in 1860 that a makeshift wooden structure known as the Wigwam was put up. Now the Wigwam was put up and taken down all within about a month. It was to only house one convention, the Republican National Convention of 1860, where we nominated Illinois' own Abraham Lincoln to be president that year. It's a pretty historic spot. He was nominated. And we have this big curved glass front to it here. Just by its address is 333 West Wacker. Kind of like 311 South Wacker, just on their addresses. They're both co-owners and possibilities. Now, but 333 West Wacker is another post-modern building. Again, post-modernism, known for its contextualism, or just paying tribute to its location. Here you have the alternating green and blue glass, reflecting the green of the river and the blue of the sky. Then you have a big curve to the front of the building, referencing the big bend in the river here. You might also notice some circular vents near the base of the building. They're just meant to reflect portholes on the ship. So again, just paying tribute to its location in the Chicago River. And this building is also thought to reflect that Chicago school of architecture, that tripartite, three-part design. You have the stone base, the curved glass shaft, the capital at the top, so the building actually changes its shape. Sort of a trapezoid-like thing up top there. It's kind of nice. Right next door, Colbert and Fox to do this building, 225 West Wacker. Again, just Nomad's address, again having a circular vent in the front, reflecting a porthole on the ship. I'd like to mention the central section of windows here, because they're separated by these spandrels that have 4 rivets in a square. Now, why decorate your building with rivets? It seems like sort of an odd decorative choice. Now, what I'd have to do for your answer with one of many Chicago bridges and all the rivets on them. Again, this is what postmodernism is all about, just paying tribute to your surroundings. And Chicago is actually known for having the most movable bridges of any city in the world. At one time, we had around 52 movable bridges. Now we're down to about 36. Now, they're all still fully functional, still go up and down whenever need be, and still far more than any other city in the world. So again, the most movable bridges here in Chicago. Most of them are this trunnion bascule type of movable bridge, a French term denoting the seesaw way they open and close. Each leaf is counterbalanced, so it goes up and down such a quick point as seesaw does. But now off to the right, we have what was known as the Builders Building. It was done in the 1920s by Graham Anderson Ferguson 1. You might notice the nice annex put on the side here, big bay windows sticking out. This building was renovated in the 1980s by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. They threw on the annex there. I like to point it out because it makes a lot of references to the original structure, kind of paying tribute to or blending in with the original design. And then it still stands out in its own right with those big bay windows sticking out. Then next door we have the LaSalle Wacker Building. This is the remnants of that old city ordinance I mentioned really briefly. And see, in 1923, city officials thought they were scientists. They came up with this idea known as the Canyon Effect. It went something like this. They said if buildings here in Chicago kept rising so tall, eventually they would block out all the sunlight and the air to the streets below, slowly transforming Chicagoans into a race of mold, spilling out to the streets beneath. I tacked on that last part myself. But they did say that only a quarter of your building could rise to its full height. The rest had to be at a city ordained to make way for the sunlight and the air to the streets below. If you're wondering what a Greek temple might look like if you were to stretch it to 50 stories tall, well, Carlo Bofield has your answer 77 minutes left. It's originally the R.R. Donnelly building, I believe it's now on to United Airlines. There's that. Might be losing battle with all this music. A couple doors down, we have this tall, flat-looking building here, 35 West Wacker, to the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency called Leo Burnett. This represents another idea in postmodernism. Just take a small piece of architecture, this guy taking the classical economy and expanding upon it. Whereas the entire building, like some giant column sitting there, reflected the base of the part of columns there. And if you look off in front of us, past Morton's, the steakhouse, there's that green building. It has a lot of gold leafing at the top, kind of hard to make out at night. But it's supposed to look like a giant champagne bottle, because it was done by the Burnham brothers back in the Prohibition years, back when alcohol was banned here in the United States. They're said to have been missing their champagne bottles. It was originally the Carbide and Carbon building. I believe it's now home to the Hard Rock Hotel. But as we clear State Street Bridge, I'll hold your attention to the ground level. Because coming up off to the right, we do have Chicago House. This is the largest Vietnam War memorial outside of Washington, D.C. It is right here, now straight off to the right. And then the building above it, the one with the dome in each corner, then the big center dome, was originally known as the Jewelers Building. It was done in 1926. The 1920s were a fairly rough and tumble time in the city of Chicago, and people were concerned for the jewelers' safety. So that building was actually designed with a car elevator. So the jewelers could drive right into the building, and this elevator would lift them to their floors. They could safely unload or bring precious stones. Now, all this safety came into question when I learned that on the 40th floor, that big center down there, none other than the notorious Chicago gangster, Mr. Al Capone, was said to be running a speakeasy in those days called the Stratosphere Lounge. So yeah, gangsters up top, jewelers down below. But now we have this Hotel 71 here. You might notice a very slender white building sort of attached to it. That is actually a separate building known as Mather Tower. I pointed out because Mather Tower was the tallest building here in the city of Chicago for just 1 week. We're going through a pretty big building boom at the time. That building was topped off in the tallest, and a week later, another building was a little bit taller. Now we do go through these building booms from time to time. Then through on, we got the Sears Tower, the Aon Center, as well as the John Hancock Center, all within a few years of each other, three of the tallest buildings as they stand here today. And up until recently, we were going through one with the Trump's building going up here, and Aqua, a bunch of other condos and office buildings going up around here in the last few years. Has kind of slowed down a little bit. But now if you remember that Chicago Tribune Tower contest, the winners of the off left here, Howells and Hood, the Tribune Tower. And then directly across the way, the first building is on the other side of Michigan Avenue here, is 333 North Michigan Avenue. And that building actually pays tribute to the second place design of that Tribune Tower contest. The second place design was done by Halil Sarian. And his building was never actually built. They did publish his design idea. When people around the city here saw this design, they realized that this was going to be the future of architecture. Now, Halil Sarian actually helped spread the Art Deco movement to the 1820s. Just a unique set of circumstances, even though he was the runner-up in that Tribune Tower contest. His design ended up having more influence. That building was put up a few years after the design competition, just to pay tribute to his to the left, get a quick glimpse of the John Hancock Center there. It's the one that's lit up at the top, has those two anti-nationalities. If you missed it the first time, we did another view here in just a moment. It is the fourth tallest building standing from Chicago, 1,127 feet to the roof, just 9 feet shy of the Aon Center, which is the third tallest, and consequently right across the way here is that grayish one with the strong lines around it. Now here's the Hancock Center. Now, even though that is the fourth tallest building standing in Chicago, they say you get the best views of Chicago from the John Hancock Center. Yes, and more specifically, they say that the best view is if you go to the 96th floor, the Signature Room Lounge, you can take a look out the window of the women's washroom. Now, I personally have never been, but it appears to me that everyone who has been there seems to agree that it is indeed the best view of the city of Chicago. And when I'm here, they will occasionally invite gentlemen in to take a quick view out the window there, so it's not a terribly private washroom. But I guess we have a great view of the city, so check that out the rest of the time. Now off to the right, we have this large triangular building. You might be able to guess who it was done by. None other than Harry Lease and Associates, the man geometrically obsessed with the triangle. This building is essentially a giant triangle. And it is home to the Swiss Hotel, a fine hotel establishment. Now, Harry Lease actually did 2 triangular buildings here in the city of Chicago. This is one of them, the Swiss Hotel. And the other one, we don't get a really good view of from the river, but it is clad in stone. It has very narrow windows. It's actually home to our correctional facility in Chicago. Now, I have not spent the night in either one of Harry Lease's triangular buildings, so I can't really compare the accommodations. But I do hear the Swiss Hotel is a fine place to stay. And coming into view from behind the Swiss Hotel, the Radio Aqua, this new building just went up here, done by Genie Gang and Associates. As it comes into view, you'll notice each floor plate is uniquely curved and shaped. So it's supposed to look like waves all through the building, just paying tribute to the surrounding waterways. It's all condos, all those great balconies and everything. Then coming into view from behind Aqua, get another view of the Aon Center, one of the third tallest buildings out here in Chicago, 1,136 feet to the roof. It's 9 feet tall. Like grayish one with a strong vertical lines right around it. Now, before that was the third tallest building standing here in Chicago. When it was done in 1973 by Edward Durrell Stone, it was the first tallest marble-clad building in the world. And not just any marble, Carrara marble, from the Carrara Quarry in Italy, where Michelangelo got his marble to do sculptures such as David and others. Now, as you can imagine, that building was very beautiful. White, opulent, Carrara marble, leaning and surface. But as you may also imagine, marble is very fragile. And going through some very cold Chicago winters, very Chicago summers, that marble was expanding and contracting, and eventually buckled, and was in danger of raining down precious Carrara marble onto pedestrians and beneath. And while nobody wanted to see a bunch of crushed pedestrians, they had to go up and take down all that marble and reclad the building in the homegrown North Carolina granite you see adorning its facade today, having withstood the test of time. Now, it actually cost more money to reclad the building than the original construction itself. Pretty costly mistake, though. Off to our left, we have this little empty plot of land here. That's where the Chicago Spire was supposed to go. That 2,000-foot building was supposed to get in Chicago. And they managed to put down the foundation for the building, or rather they put down the base. Here in Chicago, we can't put down the foundation for the building because Chicago
Thank you for reminding me.
foundation is safe. So all you have to do is dig down to the bedrock. They run these big steel tubes in the space on the ground.
I know. Yeah.
Actually serves the foundation most of the buildings here called San Francisco.
No.
Now we're here east of Lakeshore Drive, on the young man, the name of Montgomery Ward, of all people. He actually fought 30 years of legal battles to keep all 29 Chicago forever free and clear of any private structures. No private buildings were ever toward this here east of Lakeshore Drive. Except this one, which is Lake Point Tower, a large private building standing here east of Lakeshore Drive. Now, it's snuck in some of a loophole in the law. I guess train tracks used to run through here, and the railways had the rights to sell them air above their trains. So they got this air rights. It is the one and only private building here east of Lakeshore Drive. And Lake Point Tower is actually a tribute building, paying tribute to none other than Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. So the guy who did all the glass and steel box type buildings has this very curved linear building in his honor. It seems counterintuitive. But actually, when Mies van der Rohe was studying at that Bauhaus in Germany in the 1920s, he drew a sketch of a building which was this one. And his building was only around 20 stories tall, standing for women. And when he drew the sketch, the technology wasn't around to bend the steel or be necessary. So when two of his students, Shipwright and Heinrich, came upon this sketch, they decided to show their gratitude to their professor by building Lake Point Tower. When it was done in 1968, it was the tallest all-residential structure in the world. Now we're going to be pulling into the dock here in just a moment. I do have to ask that you all just kind of remain seated for the time being, or take a seat if need be. It is a safety precaution. You have to get all the lines secured, the gangway in place. When everything's all set up, the captain will come on over the speakers here and tell you when it's safe to disembark the boat. So don't mind just kind of hanging tight until then. Appreciate that. We have a quick moment here. I'll tell you a short story about Lake Point Tower. Designed a tour group much like this one, a rowdy bunch like you folks. At the end of the tour, a guy came off the boat and mentioned to me that from this point of view, Lake Point Tower looks an awful lot like a giant drinking flask. I agree. I do think it looks like a giant flask. And I also think that that guy is a huge alcoholic. That's my dad for you. That's just some random guy. That was fun. That circular structure at the top there, encamped to the flask, if you will. Now actually home to a 4-star French restaurant. I believe it's called the Cité. Now, but I'll be pulling into the dock here in just a moment, so again, just kind of hang tight for the time being. But I'll take this opportunity to thank you all for coming out here, joining us here today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your time here in Chicago. Or if you're from Chicago, kudos to you for coming out and enjoying the beautiful city.
By any chance, you have a timetable
thanks for coming out. Thanks for choosing Shoreline, and have a good night.
What's
Thank you.
Oh, no.